Why would anyone admit to something they never did? In the Middle Ages, you didn't confess because you were guilty. You confessed because you were terrified. One look at the Iron Maiden, and even the bravest would break. People begged, cried, screamed out any crime just to avoid being locked inside that steel coffin. Torture wasn't about truth, it was about control. So let's open the door to a world built on fear. A world where pain was a language and every device had only one purpose: to make you talk. We begin with one of the most feared tools of all time. Not a weapon, a machine, the rack. Forget quick death. This was slow destruction. You're tied down, arms and legs stretched in opposite directions. The executioner turns the wheel, not fast, slow, steady, cruel. Inches feel like miles as muscles tear, ligaments snap, shoulders rip apart with a sound you never forget. Your body doesn't just hurt, it comes apart. Confess or deny, it doesn't matter. You will talk, or they will keep turning that wheel until you are taller, broken, and no longer yourself. The world that breathed fear. The Middle Ages were not kind. Not just dangerous, but cruel in ways that felt endless. Fear hung in the air like smoke in a chimney. It curled around every street corner, whispered behind every locked door, clung to the clothes of everyone walking through muddy roads. And when that fear touched you, it wasn't just a thought. It was a weight pressing on your chest, making your knees shake, making your throat dry, making your heart beat like a hammer in your rib cage. Even a simple accusation could turn your life inside out. A neighbor jealous of your farm, a priest with a grudge, a stranger passing through town with a crooked smile. Any one of them could send soldiers to drag you away in the dead of night. And once they did, there was nowhere to hide, nowhere to hope, nowhere to breathe without fear. The Iron Maiden didn't move. It didn't speak. It just waited. But that was enough. You could hear it in the trembling of your own knees. You could feel it in the sweat running cold down your spine. You could smell it in the damp, iron-scented air. And the prisoners who came before you, oh, you could still hear them in your mind, screaming, begging, howling until their throats were raw, until their voices became nothing but shivering, rasping gasps. Even those who were innocent confessed. They admitted to crimes they had never heard of. They shouted names they barely knew. Anything at all, just to avoid being placed inside that standing coffin with spikes poised like sharpened teeth. People said the maiden drank fear. Maybe it did, or maybe it only reflected it, because anyone who saw it could feel their courage melt like wax in a fire. But the rack, oh, the rack demanded more than fear. It demanded flesh, bone, and the very soul of a person. You were tied down, arms pulled over your head, legs anchored. Your wrists ache immediately, the ropes biting into skin. A single turn of the wheel makes you scream. Your lungs burn. Your shoulders scream in agony you didn't know was possible. And still the wheel keeps turning. 1 inch, another inch. Pain traveling through you like wildfire. Muscles snapping. Ligaments tearing like brittle rope. Your scream echoes off stone walls, bouncing back at you, each echo louder, meaner, crueler than the last. And when the torturer pauses, you think it's over. It isn't. He's only giving you a moment to catch your breath, to gather what little strength you have left, so he can rip it from you all over again. Some prisoners confessed immediately. Some pleaded. Some cursed, spit, begged. But the rack did not care. It waits for everyone. In towns near the castles, people whispered about what happened inside the chambers. They said, "You'll hear the scream before you see the body. The first turn of the wheel feels like your heart ripping apart. They pull you higher than you can stretch, and when your legs are almost gone, they pull you higher still." Children hid under beds. Dogs whimpered and ran away. Even soldiers avoided the torturer's shadow. And yet, everyone went on with their lives. The baker kneaded bread. The blacksmith pounded iron. The priest prayed. But all of them felt the shadow, and all of them feared it, because the next victim could be anyone. Anyone who walked past the wrong person. Anyone who whispered the wrong word. Anyone who dared to question. Confession born of agony. Torturers believed their tools revealed truth. They did not. Pain revealed only desperation. Even a mother accused of petty theft would confess to murder. A young man accused of minor theft might claim he was a heretic. A quiet widow accused of gossip could suddenly admit to worshiping demons. Pain didn't care about innocence. It only cared that someone would speak, that someone would cry, that someone would beg. Because in the middle of agony, your mind stops thinking about right and wrong. It stops thinking about facts. It stops thinking about tomorrow. All it wants is now, and anything that ends the pain, even a lie, becomes truth. Sometimes, after the torturer left the room, there was silence, a heavy silence, a silence that smelled of sweat, iron, and blood. Prisoners sobbed softly, whispered prayers, or stared at the walls. Some couldn't speak. Some didn't move. Some had screamed so hard their throats cracked. But the devices didn't sleep. They waited for the next scream, for the next confession, for the next broken soul. Because the Middle Ages didn't run on truth. They ran on fear. And fear was everywhere. The Iron Maiden's Shadow. The Iron Maiden did not scream. It did not move. It did not speak. And yet, the moment a prisoner saw it, the air in the chamber seemed to tighten, wrapping itself around your chest like a rope. Fear became something you could taste, bitter and metallic, filling your mouth before the first touch of iron. The maiden stood tall in the corner of the room, a black, silent silhouette. Its door, jagged and cruel, seemed to leer at you. Inside, rows of spikes glinted faintly in the torchlight, pointing inward like a forest of sharpened teeth. It was impossible not to imagine them moving, impossible not to hear them scraping against skin, impossible not to feel the cold fingers of death brushing along your spine. Even before anyone touched you, the Iron Maiden worked its magic. People confessed before they were locked inside. People admitted crimes they had never dreamed of committing. Words spilled from lips trembling with terror. Murders, betrayals, witchcraft, treason, anything to make the terror stop. Because the Iron Maiden was patient. It could wait for hours, days, weeks. At dawn, the guards came. Soft steps echoed on stone floors. Chains rattled, scraping against the cold walls. A hand grabbed your shoulder. The rough touch burned through the fog of sleep, and your stomach twisted as your mind understood what was happening. The first sight of the Iron Maiden was the real capture. Even the strongest knees buckled. Hands shook so violently that you couldn't hold yourself upright. Your lips parted in silent pleading. The heart raced as if it wanted to leap out of your chest. Thoughts tumbled chaotically. Will it hurt? How long will it last? Can I scream loud enough for someone outside to hear? Will my body survive this? The maiden did not answer. It simply waited. And in its silent waiting, you could feel every second stretching into 1,000, each heartbeat louder than the last. You could hear yourself gasp for air, taste it in your throat like blood, and smell your own fear mixing with the cold, iron-heavy air. Sometimes the torturer would not lock the door immediately. He would watch the prisoner, seeing how they reacted. He would let you look at the spikes, let you imagine the pain in exquisite detail. Let your mind create every horror before the flesh even met steel. And it worked. Even the innocent confessed. Even the brave gave in. Even those who swore they would die before admitting anything spoke lies that would haunt them forever. A baker, accused of stealing grain, would suddenly cry out that he had poisoned a lord's family. A young scribe accused of copying forbidden texts would admit to plotting rebellion. A widow accused of slander would confess to worshiping demons. Pain had not touched them yet. Fear alone broke them. For the unlucky, the Iron Maiden did close. The doors swung slowly, deliberately, brushing the prisoner with cold steel. Every contact sent shivers down the spine. The spikes pressed, testing, warning, slicing softly, leaving marks that burned like fire. Each movement drove them deeper, each breath a struggle. Every nerve in the body screamed in pain, every thought shattered, every memory, every hope seemed to evaporate in the heat of fear. The executioner paused. A moment of silence. Not mercy. The prisoner knew it. The pause meant only that the torturer wanted them awake, fully aware, for the next movement, the next squeeze, the next round of exquisite agony. Sometimes the Iron Maiden was used in public. The accused were dragged through streets, barefoot or chained, their legs weak, arms trembling, faces pale, eyes wide, mouth dry. The Iron Maiden would be set up in the square, its door open like a cavern ready to swallow anyone who dared approach. Crowds gathered, children screamed, women gasped, men whispered bets on how long the prisoner could endure. Stone and mud were thrown at the accused, laughter and mockery filling the air. Every movement was agony, every breath a struggle, every sound of the crowd another layer of punishment. And yet, no one could save the prisoner, not even family, not even friends. Silence and fear were stronger than love. Even after release, the shadow of the Iron Maiden followed the survivor. Nightmares filled their sleep. In dreams, the coffin closed around them. In dreams, spikes pierced their skin. In dreams, their own screams echoed endlessly. Even months later, the sound of a metal door or a clanging gate could make them flinch. Even years later, a touch of steel could send them into trembling panic. The Iron Maiden did not hurt the body. It haunted the mind. It consumed courage, shattered dignity, and left a mark that would never heal.
The Iron Maiden did not kill, not always. It didn't need to. It made people speak. It made people beg. It made people betray themselves. Even those who walked away alive were never the same. Part of their spirit had been ripped away, left behind in the cold chamber. And the lesson spread through the towns, villages, and castles. The Middle Ages did not run on truth or justice or law. It ran on fear. Fear made people confess to anything. Fear made obedience absolute. Fear ensured survival, sometimes at the cost of your soul. Because the Iron Maiden's shadow was long, black, and alive, and those who touched it, or even just feared it, never forgot. The rack, breaking the body and mind. The rack was not a weapon. It was a promise. A promise that no matter how strong you were, no matter how brave, you would be stretched, torn, and undone. It stood in the center of the chamber like a blackened altar of agony. A simple wooden frame, 2 wheels, ropes coiled and ready, and yet in its simplicity it held a power far greater than any sword or axe. When prisoners were brought before it, their legs trembling, their eyes wide, their hearts hammering, they could hear the whispers before a single rope touched them. This will uncover your soul, or it will destroy it. Hands first, wrists bound with coarse rope that bit into skin immediately. Ankles next, tight enough to cut off circulation. Every fiber of the body screamed before the first turn of the wheel. You are lying flat on your back. The executioner's shadow looms above you. You can see the glint of the metal crank in his hand. His eyes cold, patient, waiting, watching. The first turn begins slowly, almost imperceptibly, and yet the pain travels instantly. A stretch in your shoulders, a tearing in your wrists, a pull through your spine. Your body shudders, your breath catches in your throat. You want to scream, you want to plead, you want it to stop, but it does not. Inches feel like miles. The first turn of the wheel is just the beginning. Muscles pull, ligaments snap, shoulders pop from their sockets, hips strain, bones resisting the impossible. Every breath feels like fire in your chest. Every heartbeat is a hammer driving itself into your skull. Some prisoners scream, some beg, some collapse into silent shaking sobs, but the rack does not care. The executioner may pause, not out of mercy, but to prolong the terror. He knows the mind is fragile, and fear can break a person just as efficiently as broken bones. And when the wheel turns again, the agony resumes. Pain had a language, and the rack spoke it fluently. It demanded words, it demanded truth, but truth was irrelevant. Any word would do. Lies, half-truths, confessions of imaginary crimes, they all counted. The goal was not justice, the goal was obedience. Many confessed to acts they had never committed. Murders, thefts, heresies, betrayals. Mothers confessed to poisoning their own children. Fathers admitted to crimes against their neighbors. Priests admitted to blasphemy. All because the human mind, faced with unbearable pain, seeks only one escape: release. The chamber echoed with sounds that haunted forever. The wet snap of a ligament, the dull cracking pop of a shoulder dislocating, the ragged gasp of lungs struggling against stretched ribs, the low moan of a person unmade inch by inch. Screams would rise and fall, blending into the stone walls, bouncing back at the prisoners, making each second feel endless. The sound alone could drive other prisoners to confess before they were even touched. And sometimes the wheel did not stop. Hours turned into days. The torturer would pause only to check if the prisoner still breathed, still reacted. Pain in the rack was not limited to the body.
The mind twisted, fear sharpened, thoughts became chaotic, memories fractured. Every attempt at hope or resistance dissolved into a single thought: please stop, please make it stop. Survivors described waking from the rack as if they were strangers to themselves. Arms hung loose, legs wobbled, faces pale and eyes hollow. A part of their soul seemed missing. Even after release, the rack haunted them. Every small stretch of muscles, every pull on their arms reminded them. Every scream in the distance echoed in their mind. Every shadow of wood or rope triggered panic. It did not forgive, it did not forget. The rack was sometimes a public spectacle. Prisoners were dragged into the town square. Crowds gathered, some curious, some cruel. Children screamed at the sight, mothers covered their eyes, and men whispered bets on how long the prisoner could endure. The rack exposed not only the prisoner's body, but also their soul to public scrutiny. Humiliation amplified the torture. It became a game for the spectators. How long can he scream before giving up? How far will she stretch before breaking? Every whimper, every tear, every whispered breath became part of the public theater, and the knowledge that strangers watched magnified every bit of pain. The rack did not aim to kill, not always. Sometimes the prisoner left alive, but nothing remained of their spirit. They walked bent, broken, trembling, haunted by memories they could not escape. It was the perfect weapon of control. It demonstrated the absolute power of fear, of authority, of the belief that no one could resist, and it worked. Every confession, every plea, every whispered lie reinforced the terror that held villages, towns, and kingdoms in its grip. Even the strongest warriors, the bravest nobles, and the most loyal servants could not resist it. The rack was not just wood, rope, and metal. It was the embodiment of human cruelty. It tore bodies, shattered minds, and left souls in pieces. And in the age of fear, it ruled as a silent god, demanding obedience, surrender, and despair. The rack left nothing untouched. Body, mind, soul. Every part was tested. Every prisoner became a warning. Every confession, true or false, served as proof of fear's absolute power.
The strappado was a simple tool, a rope, a beam, the body. And yet, in its simplicity lay a terror far greater than swords or fire. You were brought into the chamber, hands tied behind your back. The rope was looped around your wrists, fastened to a hook in the ceiling. At first, it seemed almost harmless, a mere suspension. But anyone who saw it before knew the truth. The strappado was a machine designed to make the body betray the mind, and the mind betray itself. Even the strongest soldiers, the bravest knights, the most loyal subjects could not endure its cruelty without fear twisting their every thought. The prisoner's feet lifted slowly from the floor. At first, it feels strange, unnatural, suspenseful, a tingling in the arms, then sharp pain. Your shoulders scream and protest, ligaments pull like ropes straining to snap. Every muscle clenches instinctively, fighting gravity. The first drop may not seem dangerous, but the sudden pull shocks every joint, every tendon, every nerve in the upper body. Eyes water, mouth opens to scream, breath catches. and then a pause, enough for the mind to register that this is only the beginning. Pain floods your body. It is not just in the arms. It travels into the chest, the spine, the neck. Every movement, every heartbeat, every involuntary twitch magnifies the agony. The executioner knows exactly how to make it hurt. One small drop, just enough to wrench the shoulders from their sockets, then pause, then pull again. Repeat, repeat, repeat. Minutes stretched into hours. Each repetition tears more than flesh. It tears patience, courage, and sanity. Some prisoners faint. Some sobbed quietly. Some screamed in a broken, ragged voice. And even those who tried to resist could not. Pain does not negotiate. It does not listen. It does not care if you are innocent or guilty. It only exists to make you suffer. The strappado did not need words to work. But once pain became unbearable, words were inevitable. Even the innocent confessed. Even the brave begged for mercy. Even those who swore their innocence declared crimes they had never committed. A young scholar might admit to heresy. A merchant accused of fraud might confess to murder. A nobleman could cry out for sins against the crown. Pain demanded truth, but it always received lies. Lies of desperation, lies of fear, lies to save what little life remained. The strappado chamber echoed with horror. The sharp crack of dislocated shoulders, the ragged gasps of lungs fighting for air, the low moans of muscles torn from their natural place. Every sound fed the fear of those waiting their turn. Every echo warned the next victim that resistance was pointless. In some towns, the strappado was a public spectacle. The accused might be suspended in a visible courtyard, letting the crowd watch the slow unraveling of the human body. Children screamed, mothers prayed, spectators whispered bets. How long will it take before he confesses? The crowd did not need to touch the prisoner. The fear itself became the tool, and the tool was absolute. Even after release, survivors never forgot. The shoulders remained weak. Every sudden movement, every awkward twist brought back memories of unimaginable pain. Sleep became haunted by visions of being suspended, helpless, screaming. Some survivors could not lift their arms for weeks. Some were never able to raise them fully again. The pain had left a permanent mark on their body and on their mind. The strappado was not designed to kill. It was designed to break the body slowly, shatter the mind, and humiliate the soul. And it succeeded in ways more terrifying than death itself. The fear of strappado extended beyond the chamber. Townsfolk whispered of it in the marketplace. Merchants warned their children. Servants trembled at the mention of the rope. The knowledge that such pain existed, that it could happen to anyone, created a culture of obedience. Laws were respected, not because they were fair, but because resistance meant suffering beyond imagination. The strappado was proof that fear could control an entire society. One suspended prisoner was a warning for hundreds. One scream echoed for years in the minds of anyone who heard it. The strappado was not just metal, rope, or wood. It was despair made physical. Families lost fathers, mothers, children, even when the prisoner survived. Communities lost trust as accusations spread, often leading to arrests and torture for minor offenses. Innocence was meaningless. Courage was irrelevant. Only fear mattered. And yet, some still survived. Some lived to tell the story.
Their words carried the weight of the agony endured. Their bodies bore the scars of dislocated shoulders, torn muscles, and broken bones. Their minds carried memories that could never fade. The strappado was perfected by torturers who understood human anatomy and human fear. Each drop, each twist, each pause was calculated. Too much force, and the prisoner might die immediately. Too little, and the confession would take too long. The torturer's skill lay in knowing exactly how to inflict maximum pain without ending life too soon. And in that skill there was cruelty unlike any weapon. A sword kills quickly, fire destroys fast, but the strappado, it slowly unmade a person, turning flesh and bone into tools of confession, obedience, and fear. Even centuries later, the strappado remained a symbol of medieval cruelty. Art, chronicles, and eyewitness accounts described its horror in detail. It represented not only the brutality of justice in the Middle Ages, but also the terrifying ingenuity of humans capable of designing pain as a weapon. And every drop of a body suspended in pain, every cry echoing through stone halls, was a reminder. Power in the Middle Ages was not held by kings or knights alone. It was held by fear. And the strappado, simple as it seemed, was fear incarnate. The strappado broke bodies, minds, and souls. It turned prisoners into whispers of terror for towns and villages. It reminded the innocent, the brave, and the defiant that in the Middle Ages, pain was truth, and fear was law. The collar of spikes was not designed to kill quickly. It was designed to torment slowly, to humiliate, and to make every movement a punishment. Imagine standing still, your neck encased in a heavy iron ring, spikes pressed into your throat, jawline, and skull. Every breath, every blink, every tiny turn of your head forced the metal points deeper. Pain was constant, inescapable, unrelenting. The collar did not merely hurt. It controlled your body, your posture, your freedom, your very will. And as the hours passed, it broke more than flesh. It broke minds. It broke dignity. The prisoner was brought forward, trembling, hands tied, knees weak, eyes wide with fear. The collar was heavy, cold, and unforgiving. As it was placed around the neck, every muscle tensed instinctively. It bit into skin immediately. The first movement sent tiny slivers of agony through the throat and shoulders. The spikes did not puncture deeply yet, but the pressure was enough to make every heartbeat feel like a hammer driving steel into flesh. A cough, a swallow, a turn of the head, it all intensified the pain. And the prisoner quickly learned that even the smallest natural movement became unbearable. The true horror of the collar of spikes was time. Minutes became hours. Hours became a full day, and still the spikes pressed, digging deeper as muscles fatigued and skin weakened. You could not lie down. You could not rest. Every attempt to sleep sent spikes into flesh. You could not eat or drink properly. Even swallowing caused stabbing pain. The body rebelled, muscles cramped, eyes watered, neck veins throbbed painfully. And the mind began to falter. Thoughts tangled, panic rose, fear became a living thing inside the skull. You imagined the spikes moving even when they did not. Every shadow of a guard, every sound of chains, every whisper of the crowd magnified the agony. The collar of spikes was rarely a private torture. Its terror was multiplied by spectators. Prisoners were paraded through towns, chained to posts, or made to stand in the public square. Children pointed and laughed. Women gasped and whispered. Men jeered, throwing mud, rotten food, and stones. Every sound was a reminder that your suffering was entertainment. Every jeer, every mocking laugh, every cruel comment became part of the punishment. And in this way, the collar was not just physical torment, it was psychological warfare. It stripped away pride, dignity, and hope long before it could break the body completely. Weeks could pass. For some prisoners, the removal of the collar only came after multiple interrogations. The spikes had punctured skin, leaving open wounds that festered. Infections set in. Weak muscles and constant bleeding created a cycle of agony that seemed endless. Sleep became impossible. Hunger and thirst gnawed at the body. The simplest movement sent waves of pain across muscles and joints. And the prisoner, trapped in a cage of metal, learned that endurance was all that remained. The collar of spikes was a masterclass in power. It did not need to kill to achieve obedience. It did not need to inflict permanent damage to crush the spirit. The constant pain, the loss of mobility, the public humiliation, these were tools far more effective than the sword. It forced prisoners to speak, to confess, to admit crimes, sometimes before they had even committed them. The human instinct for survival overrode truth, honor, and courage. Words spilled from mouths in desperate bids for relief. Lies, false confessions, self-incrimination all flowed easily when pain was the only language your body understood. Survivors of the collar of spikes rarely walked unscarred. Their necks, shoulders, and upper chests bore permanent marks. Nerves were damaged, muscles atrophied. Movements remained painful long after the collar was removed, but the psychological damage ran deeper. Survivors described reliving the public humiliation over and over in their minds. Every memory of laughter, every thrown stone, every cruel comment replayed endlessly. The mind, conditioned to fear the spikes, could not easily forget. Every shadow of iron, every sound of metal scraping triggered a flinch, a shiver, or a memory of terror. The collar of spikes was not just a device, it was a statement. It demonstrated that in the Middle Ages, pain could be carefully measured and used as a tool of control. It showed that humiliation and fear were as valuable as punishment. It proved that the human body could be held hostage for weeks while the mind cracked first. This was a torture of patience and precision. It forced prisoners to endure, to plead, to betray themselves. It left behind survivors who carried scars, nightmares, and shame for the rest of their lives. The Middle Ages were brutal, but the collar of spikes teaches a lesson beyond the cruelty. Fear is more powerful than pain alone. Humiliation is as sharp as steel. The mind is fragile, and once broken, obedience is easy to extract. Every inch of pain, every hour of suffering, every public mockery reinforced the power of authority. And the collar, cold, heavy, and spiked, stood as proof that control could be exercised without killing, through pure, relentless terror. The collar of spikes did not kill swiftly. It did not even need to. It left bodies weak, minds shattered, and dignity destroyed. And in doing so, it ensured the Middle Ages remained a time when fear ruled more than law, and pain dictated obedience.
The Scavenger's Daughter. If the rack and the collar of spikes were about pulling and stretching, the Scavenger's Daughter was the opposite. It did not tear the body apart. It folded it in half, compressing lungs, blood vessels, and muscles into a small, agonizing package of human suffering. Invented in 16th century England under Henry VIII, this device was a nightmare in iron. Its A-shaped frame, deceptively simple, promised one thing: relentless pain. And it delivered.
hour after hour, day after day, until the mind screamed for mercy that would never come. You were brought into a dim chamber, hands and knees weak, eyes darting around. The scavenger's daughter stood ominous in the center, a cruel silhouette of iron, cold and immovable. Guards pushed you forward, shoving you into the crouching position that the device demanded. Knees to chest, head bent forward, arms pulled tight. The frame clamped over you like a giant hand, locking the body into a shape that seemed impossible to breathe in, impossible to move in, impossible to survive in. The first squeeze forced your lungs to compress. Breathing became shallow and painful. Blood rushed into your head, making your eyes bulge and your vision blur. Muscles strained violently, spasms shaking your body uncontrollably. Pain radiated through every joint. Even the act of blinking sent jolts of agony through your skull. The scavenger's daughter turned the most natural human act, breathing, into a battlefield. Each inhale was a battle, each exhale a torment. The ribs protested, lungs burned, and every breath felt like drawing fire into your chest. Minutes passed like hours, hours passed like days, and still the iron frame pressed on, relentless, unyielding, unforgiving. Some prisoners fainted, some vomited from the intensity of pain and pressure. Some cried quietly, hoping the executioner would pause just for a second to let their body recover. But mercy was a stranger here. The horror of the scavenger's daughter was not just in the pain, it was in the helplessness. You could not escape, you could not move, you could not even cry without agony tearing through your body. The frame held you like a vice. Every nerve screamed, every joint begged for release, and every second of immobility reminded you were powerless. Time became meaningless. Pain stretched out unbroken in every tick of the clock. Thoughts of resistance, bravery, or survival evaporated. Only one desire remained: to escape, even if escape was impossible. Sometimes victims were displayed in public while locked in the scavenger's daughter. People gathered to watch, a mix of curiosity and cruel delight etched on their faces. Mothers covered children's eyes. Men whispered bets on how long the prisoner could endure. The victim's agony became a lesson in obedience, fear, and submission, and the executioners delighted in their audience. Every twitch, every scream, every struggle became entertainment. And yet the prisoner's suffering was not for spectacle alone. It was a tool of interrogation, a method to extract confessions, and a weapon of fear that would haunt survivors and witnesses alike. Unlike stretching devices, the scavenger's daughter left no broken bones visible at first, but the damage was real. Lungs strained until breathing was shallow and burning. Blood pressure surged in the head until eyes bulged and nose bled. Muscles tore internally, leaving long-term spasms and weakness. Nerves were crushed and joints stiffened permanently. Even after release, survivors reported lasting injuries. Simple movements caused excruciating pain. Arms and legs weakened. Shoulder joints stiffened. The body itself became a reminder of the cruelty endured. As with other medieval torture devices, the scavenger's daughter was a tool of control. The pressure was unbearable, fear was overwhelming, and eventually words were forced out. Confessions came quickly, not always truthful, but enough to satisfy the torturer. Even the innocent admitted to crimes they had never committed: treason, heresy, theft, even murder. Lies spilled as freely as sweat and tears. The body had no choice. The mind surrendered in obedience to pain. The scavenger's daughter did not tear you apart, but it folded every part of you into suffering. It made breathing a battlefield, movement a punishment, survival a cruel joke. It was not just a device, it was a masterpiece of medieval cruelty, a testament to the terrifying lengths humans would go to control one another, and a reminder that fear was the most powerful tool of all.
Burning at the stake. The smell of smoke, the crackle of flames, the heat that makes the air itself unbearable. Burning at the stake was not just a punishment, it was a spectacle, a warning carved in fire, a demonstration of absolute power over life and death. Across medieval Europe, this method of execution was reserved for the most feared: heretics, witches, traitors, and those accused of moral or religious crimes. It was a punishment designed to instill terror not just in the condemned, but in the minds of the crowd. And yet, for the prisoner, it was a slow march into hell. You're dragged forward, bound to a wooden post, your hands tied, your feet shackled. The crowd murmurs, some curious, some jeering, some praying for your soul. Green wood is stacked around you, soaked in pitch and tar to ensure the fire burns slowly. Your eyes water at the smell of resin. Your lungs burn with smoke before the flames even touch your skin. This was the theater of pain. Every detail mattered. The audience needed time to witness, to learn, to fear. The condemned had no choice but to endure, to feel, to suffer publicly. The fire begins at your feet, a slight sizzle, a sharp heat licking at skin. You try to pull back, but you are bound. Panic surges. Your breath comes in gasps. The smell of burning hair and resin fills your nostrils. Your skin blisters. Pain shoots up your legs. You scream, your voice raw and broken. The crowd reacts, some recoiling in horror, others cheering at your suffering. Every movement is agony. Every attempt to escape is punished instantly by the heat. And above all, the fire tests patience, endurance, and fear. The executioner controls the pace. The flames rise and fall, each flicker a reminder that death is close, yet not immediate. As the flames climb, the smoke fills your lungs. Breathing becomes a battle. Every inhale draws fire and smoke into your throat. Every exhale burns the inside of your chest. Some prisoners lose consciousness briefly, only to wake in even greater agony as the fire continues. Green wood crackles and sparks fall like rain, igniting your hair, scorching your clothes, and searing the nerves in your skin. Pain is everywhere. Heat presses on every surface. The mind begins to fracture under the constant stimulus. Fear and terror amplify the agony, making seconds feel like hours, minutes like days. Burning at the stake was not merely execution, it was psychological warfare played out on a public stage. Crowds gathered in town squares. Children screamed at the sight. Mothers wept. Men whispered bets on how long the victim would endure. The condemned suffering became a lesson in obedience, a warning to any who might defy authority. Executioners sometimes added tar, pitch, or other accelerants to intensify pain. Flames did not simply burn, they tormented, inhaled, and pressed upon the lungs and skin, prolonging agony. Witnessing death by fire was meant to leave a permanent imprint on the collective memory of the town. Defiance meant suffering. Rebellion meant slow, agonizing death. Some victims survived for minutes, others for half an hour or more, writhing in the flames, their skin blistered,
their hair ignited and their lungs burning from smoke inhalation. The mind fights to survive even when the body is betraying it. Thoughts of escape, of hope, of prayers for mercy, these are all part of the battle inside the prisoner's skull. Pain and fear are intertwined. The fear of what is coming can be as crushing as the flames themselves. Every heartbeat is a countdown. Every second is a drum of impending doom. Eventually, the body succumbs. Some die from shock, others from asphyxiation, others from burns. Eyes may explode from the heat, skin may char, hair may ignite, lungs collapse from smoke inhalation. For those left alive until the final moment, death is neither quick nor merciful. It is a release from an unrelenting torment that leaves nothing untouched: body, mind, and spirit. For the survivors, if any, the scars last a lifetime. The smell of smoke haunts dreams. The memory of screaming bodies, burning wood, and public humiliation stays. Every flicker of flame in a fireplace may bring the nightmare back in vivid detail. Burning at the stake was more than punishment. It was propaganda. It taught obedience, fear, and submission. It reminded towns, villages, and kingdoms that authority could control life and death. It displayed power in the most primal, terrifying form: fire, pain, and public humiliation. The method was slow, deliberate, and theatrical. Quick executions did not leave an impression. Fire carved memories into the minds of all who watched. It demonstrated control through terror rather than mere physical punishment. Thousands died this way across Europe, innocents and guilty alike. Accusations fueled by superstition, fear, and politics sent people to the stake. Families lost loved ones, communities were scarred, and the survivors, if any, carried physical burns, permanent lung damage, and the psychological weight of witnessing such horror. Burning at the stake reminds us of the Middle Ages as a time when power was enforced through terror, when spectacle replaced justice, and when human ingenuity was applied to maximize pain rather than compassion. It is a testament to the horrors people endured, the fear that ruled societies, and the dark ingenuity of torture designed to control, humiliate, and terrorize. Flames may have consumed flesh, but they could not erase the stories of suffering, endurance, and the human spirit trapped between agony and oblivion. Burning at the stake was the ultimate warning. Pain was drawn out, fear was amplified. Survival was a test of mind and body alike. It was not just execution, it was a public lesson in terror, a tool of control, and a cruel display of human ingenuity in suffering.